right, I need that. And then we're good. Welcome to another episode of Fixing Your Agile Coaching. I am professional Scrum trainer Ryan Ripley. Joining me this week is professional Scrum trainer Summer Lawrence. Summer, it is so good to see you. I think the last time we talked, not on a virtual thing, was at the mothership in Burlington at scrum.org headquarters. And we had a really lovely conversation that I wasn't expecting because we'd never met, but it just felt like it was like an old friend. And we just sat down and talked. And I was just so fascinated with your views on Scrum and the various, had to have you on here. And I just appreciate you joining and sharing your time with us. So thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. I'm terribly shy, so talking to people is hard for me. I do this for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Summer, something that we were talking about before we got going, and something that I think you've been really looking into and working on, is this idea of experiential learning, running experiments, trying things. And so I think we're going to call this session The Power of Experiments. And I was wondering if you could tee up kind of your premise, where your mind and your heart have been going with this, and just what are some thoughts here around this?
I am the president of the Overthinkers Club.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So as an Agile coach, when I'm out doing coaching as part of my consulting, and even when I'm training, I started digging into some of the really core foundational pillars of agility, including empiricism.
Right.
I'm married to a scientist. I'm around it all the time, constantly. And as you get introduced to different ways of working within the Agile world, you learn how to question why. I was always that kid, Mom, why?
Yep.
She still claims I will get retribution for that someday.
Maybe in a smaller version of someone somewhere someday, right?
Maybe. So I've questioned why for a very long time. And at the core of every Agile way of working is this word called empiricism, or the pillars of inspection, adaptation, and transparency. And I had to understand why those were important and why they were critical. So I started diving into it, and I found something really interesting. A hypothesis.
Cool.
Look, I know everybody knows what they are, right? I am assuming that if I do this thing, then this other thing will happen. Turns out, though, we very rarely take the time, especially when we're encountering a change, to ask ourselves why we're making this change and what we're assuming is going to happen. And very rarely do we say, how will I know it really did happen? So
this is getting meta. It's how do I know what I actually think I know?
Yeah. How do I know what I think I know? And I realized that a lot of the strain when you're adapting to an Agile way of working is we're asking people to take a lot of things on faith.
Yep.
Right? And that's not empiricism. That is just not empiricism. That's not science. And if we're going to take people down an Agile pathway, we need to give them the respect to help and set them up with experiments where they can prove the truth themselves. I started incorporating experiments and experiential learning in my coaching, especially with product owners and Scrum Masters, because they're the ones who give me the most one-on-one time. And then using experiments with the teams in retrospectives so that they can make a hypothesis about what would happen when they apply this continuous improvement and whether they know it would work.
Nice. So it's that truly validating the learning or closing the feedback loop. It sounds like that's where the focus is shifted to, because anecdotally, I've for 20 years, I've seen the same thing. We think this is going to happen. We're going to put a bunch of money against it, and we're going to make sure that happened, because if we're wrong, we're in trouble.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. It's OKRs, lots of things.
Perfect.
Measure in this way. We do it in business. We rarely do it for ourselves in our own learning.
Right. It's almost like we're not allowing ourselves to be surprised, or we're trying to cut serendipity out of the process.
Right. A very simple experiment. You are a Scrum Master who has facilitated every daily Scrum for your team.
Yep.
Every one of them. And a coach tells you, why don't you try not? And see what happens with the team. That takes a lot of faith to do that, especially.
But summer, it'll be a disaster. I don't want to.
Yeah.
How do you know? It
It
could.
might be a disaster. It might be a disaster,
Yep.
but maybe it won't be. And if you sit back and you ask the coach, okay, what is it we're really trying to see? And you come up with a hypothesis like, if I do not facilitate the daily scrum, then my team will manage their own discussion and end in 15 minutes. What does success look like for that, Ryan?
Success would be a daily scrum that is executed by the developers that meets the expected outcome of the event within the 15 minutes without my presence.
Right. And you also have some more qualitative measures you could write tests for.
Sure.
The developers say it's better. That's qualitative. It's a quantitative, qualitative measurement. I know that sounds.
No, it's great.
Yeah, I know. And what that actually is it's called quasi-experimental research.
Okay.
So experimental research is when you have a control.
Right.
So if you were Scrum Master of 2 identical teams with the same developers on each team, you could.
You're the placebo, and I'm the. Yeah, I got it.
Then you could run a true capital E experiment. But what we're talking about is called quasi-experimental research. And it's something that is critical in academia. And it lives in the complex world.
Yep. Well, and so this should be, and to me, this should just be second nature to a Scrum team, right? How would a product owner execute on a product backlog without this constant thinking that like this next product backlog item that I think is the most keyword think is the most valuable thing,
right?
That's a hypothesis when you pull it into a sprint and go to execute it. There's no guarantees there. So why isn't this just second nature? Because I agree. I've seen the same things in the field as you, that this thinking is dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? This thinking is scary. But if every PBI is a hypothesis, it's unproven value, it's unproven tech, it's unproven that we can even deliver it. Why isn't this the most comfortable thing in the world to these teams?
It's a mindset.
Okay.
Anytime I say, so Ryan, have you been thinking about making a purchase lately to make your life better?
Sure.
Okay. How are you going to know it's a good purchase?
Oh. If laundry doesn't end up hanging up on it instead of me actually using it, like a treadmill or I mean, right. So
it gets used. It gets
usage,
used.
Right?
How are you going to measure that? Now we start getting personal, huh?
Oh, we do. I don't know. 15,000 steps per day would be a target, right?
Okay. How are you going to track that?
A Fitbit.
Okay. Excellent. How often are you going to inspect whether your purchase was a successful one?
Exactly. So that would be, I'm going to do it monthly until it isn't, and then I'm going to throw the thing in the garage.
Yeah. See, here's the thing that we miss. The reason that I hypothesize that the reason we are uncomfortable with product backlog items or even sprint goals or product goals being hypotheses,
hypothesize, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, is that then we have to write tests for whether or not it's going to be successful. We have to think about it failing.
Yep.
And then we realize we are on the hook.
Yeah.
For measuring it, for tracking it, and for inspecting and adapting it. It's the same reason a lot of teams release work into the wild with users, and rarely do they have a live customer feedback loop to see if what they built was fit for purpose and successful. A product owner should have a nice series of hypotheses about the value, quality, and use of their product that they should constantly be revisiting. Any good user experience professional partnered with a product owner would advise them for that.
It's hard to argue with it. To me, it sounds like a lot of work, which is also why it's probably neglected, right?
Right. Well, as a coach, it's also an easy place for me to go. So my advice would be if you're struggling with a team that doesn't want to take your advice, I get it. Maybe they're a little hard-headed about it, or they were voluntold to have you as a coach. Sometimes that happens in the world of Agile coaching. And I propose throwing a few experiments out there to see if the team want to prove a few things to themselves.
So what would be an example of the type of, and I know that it's very contextual, right? It's very contextual, but if you were to walk up to team X, which is the typical team that you would work with.
Team SpaceX?
Sure. What's an experiment? Let's say that, and they are kind of resistors, right? And it's probably, there's some coercion behind it. And you're right. Those things happen. Yeah. What would be an experiment that you would propose that the people out there could try kind of get moving down this path?
Sure. And in this made up team,
Sure.
Team X, tell me, what are some of the things they're struggling with right now?
They are struggling with knowing that what they're doing is actually valuable. There's a misconnection. There's a gap between what they've built and whether or not the customer loves it.
Okay.
And they just don't know.
Right. So I would propose a few experiments for them. I'd say, hey, I can tell you all day that customer feedback loops are valuable.
Right.
And that you should do everything you need to do to get them. I understand you're hesitant. Maybe you don't have access to the people who touch the customer. Maybe it's a big hassle. I get it. Your accountability ends at release. Here are some experiments you could try. There are tools you could employ, like Google Analytics.
Sure.
If we track XYZ on our product, then that will indicate that customers do or do not use this part of the product. That's one. They could use a tool-based experiment. The second thing they could do is they could have a people-based experiment. You see where I'm going? You always have a people experiment, a process experiment, or a tools experiment you can run around any problem. A people-based experiment might be, we hypothesize that when our product is released, our product owner will be able to get, if our product owner interviews 5 active customers, then most of them will express enjoyment and use for the new feature. Easy to test.
Yeah.
And then you have process experiments. It could be as easy as if we establish an aftermarket release feedback loop with the customer satisfaction department, then we will see that the product's dissatisfaction calls have reduced. That's pretty common for when you're fixing a bug or you're remediating a feature that people have complained about.
You know, some that I have seen is if we fix this process flow, the number of abandoned shopping carts will decrease by 50%. But actually coming up with that measure of success and then going back and checking it and then iterating on that regularly, and such a good practice, so difficult to do. But I think these are very low impact experiments that people could actually take a shot at.
Yeah.
And it's just such an important mindset that everything we're doing on a Scrum team, right, is an experiment until we get feedback from the customer. And if you're not intentional about the feedback, and if you don't know what you're going to do once you have the feedback, I find that to be a gap too. What new decision will I take based off of learning this? And if you can't answer it, you're probably measuring the wrong thing.
Well, if you're not going to take any action, all you're doing is wasted work. It's like building artifacts you never look at again.
Right.
If you build a product, you never look at it again. Yeah.
Right. The binder of validation that sits on the shelf.
Right. Now, as a coach, I'll say a really rich source of ideas for you to actually craft a coaching working agreement around are identifying their existing pain points and problems, and then taking a look at the sample key value measures in the evidence-based management guide, things they want to improve. Look at their problems, ask them if they want improvement in these key value measure areas, and build your coaching working agreement around that. So too often we go into a team with the subtextual coaching agreement objective of, I will make you more agile.
Yeah.
According to my standards of agile. Instead, if you craft your coaching working agreement around helping them run experiments to solve a specific pain point or problem, you'll have nothing but evidence when you got out of it of the progress you made and the continuous improvements the team put in place.
Well, and I think that evidence is the power of experiments. We're no longer guessing. We're using data. We're able to go back to people and say, this is what we've observed. This is what we learned. Here's what the data is telling us.
Yep.
What is the next best thing to do?
Yep.
Now that we've learned it.
And the evidence takes the emotion out of the change transition for an Agile team. That's why I think experiments are really powerful as a coaching tool. And I love geeking out about it. So thanks for letting me geek out about it for a while.
Oh, and thanks for talking to us about it. I think this is such an important mindset. I love the tie-in to EBM at the end. That's something that's really front of mind for Todd and I right now. We're really trying to prove, are we doing things that are actually valuable? And sometimes we find out, no. Fortunately, though, our users are telling us that fixing your Agile coaching with all of these great coaches like Summer is valuable. So we're going to keep doing it.
Good. Excellent. Right?
And so, Summer, thank you so much for joining us. This is such a great topic and really appreciate your expertise here. And I hope you come back soon.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. I've had a great time. And when you figure out what your success measures are for fixing your Agile coaching, let me know.
Awesome. We'll work on that and get back to you.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. A lot of our success comes from your comments, your questions, your interactions on social media. So be sure to check out all of the socials. Todd and I are still trying to figure out what Instagram is for. We're a little older, but we'll figure it out. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a video like this one when we have great people like Summer on. We don't want you to miss it, so like and subscribe. Be sure to check out the shows that just popped up below. The YouTube algorithm thinks you'll like them. We do too. For Summer, I'm Ryan. We hope you enjoyed this. Go forward, do some great things, run an experiment, leave a comment below. Let us know how it went. I'd imagine we'll pop back in and check the comments here. And if something really cool came up, we'd love to hear your story too. All right, everyone, go forward, do some great things, help some people, run some experiments, do some great Scrum. We'll see you next week.